Most people don't realize their vision is changing until it's already too late. After 50, something quiet but powerful starts to happen in the eyes. It's not dramatic at first. Just a bit more trouble reading the fine print, needing more light to see clearly at night, or noticing that your eyes feel drier than they used to. These seem like minor annoyances, part of just getting older. But neuroscience tells us something more profound is going on beneath the surface. Something that deserves our attention. The truth is, age-related vision decline starts long before we even realize it. The cells in our eyes, especially in the retina, begin to degenerate subtly and progressively. They're no longer able to process visual input as efficiently as they did in our younger years. The rods, those specialized cells that help us see in low light, start dying off first. That's why night vision becomes one of the earliest signs of deterioration. It's not your imagination when the headlights at night feel blinding, or the contrast between shadows and light becomes harder to interpret. It's the neural circuitry weakening, and the longer we ignore it, the more that circuitry degrades. There's a very tight connection between how our brain processes visual information and how healthy our eyes remain as we age. In fact, your visual system doesn't stop at the eye itself. The retina is technically part of the central nervous system. It's brain tissue. And just like any other part of your brain, it's sensitive to inflammation, oxidative damage, and nutrient deficiencies. When visual decline begins, it's not just about the eyes getting older. It's the brain's processing of vision becoming slower, less precise, and more vulnerable to noise in the signal. Think of it this way: your entire visual field, your ability to track motion, detect contrast, adapt to light changes, relies on real-time communication between your eyes and your brain. And after 50, this feedback loop becomes strained. It doesn't happen overnight. It happens gradually, which makes it even more dangerous because it's easy to dismiss. People adapt, they get brighter lights at home, hold books farther away, increase font sizes on their phones, but they don't address the root problem. They work around it rather than through it, and here's the critical point. Once degeneration accelerates, the changes can become irreversible. The visual cortex in the brain begins receiving incomplete or faulty data from the retina, and over time it stops processing with the same efficiency. That's not just about how well you see, it's about how well you interpret what you see. Balance, spatial awareness, and reaction time all suffer when your visual input is compromised. This isn't just about vision, it's about safety, confidence, and independence. That's why the time to intervene is not when the symptoms are obvious, it's before they ever show up. Neuroscience shows us that neural systems, including the visual system, respond incredibly well to targeted support, especially when intervention is early and consistent. The retina, while sensitive, is also remarkably responsive to nutritional and metabolic support, but you have to understand the pattern, and more importantly, you have to respect it. You have to know that just because you can still see clearly in your 50s doesn't mean your system isn't under strain. And by the time that strain becomes visible in your daily life, your retina may have already lost a significant portion of its functional potential. Now here's where things get encouraging. This decline is not a one-way street. We now know that neuroplasticity doesn't just apply to memory or learning. It applies to vision as well. The visual system can adapt, strengthen, and even partially recover function when given the right inputs. This is where nutrition becomes powerful, especially when you understand how specific vitamins fuel specific neural circuits. That's the next step, but before that, we have to agree on this. Age-related visual decline is not inevitable. It is predictable, measurable, and in many cases, preventable. What you do now will determine how well you see, not just next year, but 10, even 20 years from now. One of the most overlooked truths about your vision is this: your eyes are not separate from your brain. In fact, they are your brain. The retina, the thin layer of cells at the back of your eye that captures light and sends signals to your brain, is actually an extension of your central nervous system. It's neural tissue, and it functions in direct communication with the rest of your brain every moment you're awake. What that means is simple but powerful. Anything that affects your brain affects your eyes. And that includes how well you see, how clearly you focus, how fast you react to visual input, and how your brain interprets the signals your eyes deliver. The visual system is one of the most complex, high-speed information processors in the body. Within milliseconds, light enters your eyes, passes through the lens, and is translated by the retina into electrical signals. These signals travel via the optic nerve and reach the visual cortex in the back of your brain, where they're interpreted and turned into the images you're experiencing in real time. That process is constant. Every second you're awake, your brain is processing millions of bits of visual data: color, contrast, motion, depth, brightness, edges, and all of it depends on how efficiently that brain-eye connection is functioning. Now here's where things start to shift with age. After 50, the brain's efficiency in processing information begins to decline, not drastically, but steadily. Reaction times slow. Signal transmission between neurons isn't as sharp. Inflammation becomes more common, blood flow can decrease, and the mitochondria in your brain and eye cells, the little energy factories, don't produce as much fuel as they used to. That slowdown in the brain doesn't just affect memory or focus. It affects vision too, and often that's the missing piece when people try to improve their eyesight. They look at the eye alone, buy stronger glasses, use eye drops, maybe adjust their screen brightness, but they don't address the system that's interpreting the visual input. It's like trying to clean the lens on a camera without checking if the sensor is damaged or the processor is lagging. The result is still blurry, no matter how polished the lens might be. Vision is not just about clarity. It's about cognition. It's about interpretation. Your ability to recognize faces, to track movement, to judge distance, to navigate through a room without bumping into furniture. These are all brain functions working in harmony with your visual system. We also know that certain brain regions, especially those related to visual attention and processing, become more vulnerable to decline after midlife. But, and this is critical, that decline is not predetermined. It is highly modifiable, and one of the strongest levers we have to influence it is nutrition. The brain and eyes both rely on specific nutrients to function at full capacity. They require adequate blood flow, antioxidant protection, and consistent fuel in the form of vitamins, minerals, and fatty acids. When even one of those variables drops, especially a key one like vitamin A, it begins to degrade the performance of the entire system. Your retina can't signal properly, your optic nerve transmission weakens, and your brain struggles to interpret the reduced input. That's why the conversation around vision after 50 has to be broader than just eye health. It has to include brain health. Because the two are inseparable. When people start experiencing visual challenges, it's not just about what they can or can't see. It's about what their brain is or isn't doing with that information. And in many cases, it's because the brain-eye connection has been weakened by years of low-grade inflammation, nutritional neglect, and lack of targeted support. But here's the encouraging part. The brain is adaptable. Even in your 50s, 60s, and beyond, neuroplasticity remains possible. You can strengthen these pathways, you can improve the speed and clarity of visual processing, but you have to approach it at the system level. You have to nourish the brain if you want to protect the eyes. That's why the solution isn't just about lenses or screens or exercises. It's about the internal environment you create through your daily habits, especially what you eat, how you sleep, how you manage inflammation, and whether you're supporting the specific nutrients that preserve this neural circuitry. And when you do, the results don't just show up in better vision. They show up in sharper thinking, faster reactions, and a deeper sense of confidence in how you move through the world. Because you're not just seeing, you're interpreting, you're responding, you're fully connected. And that connection is what keeps your mind, your body, and your senses aligned as you age. There's one nutrient that sits at the very center of your eye health, especially after age 50. a nutrient so essential that without it, your vision begins to break down at the cellular level. That nutrient is vitamin A, but we're not just talking about general health or vague benefits here. We're talking about a specific, measurable biological function that relies entirely on vitamin A to work properly. It's not optional, it's required, and without enough of it, your ability to see, particularly in low light, can decline rapidly, even if everything else seems fine on the surface. Vitamin A is not just good for your eyes, it's the foundation of your visual system. It's the raw material your body uses to create a molecule called retinal. Retinal is crucial because it combines with proteins in the photoreceptor cells of your retina to form what's called rhodopsin. This is the light, sensitive pigment that allows your eyes to detect light and convert it into electrical signals that your brain can interpret as sight. Without enough retinal, that system simply doesn't function properly. Your photoreceptors start failing, especially the rods, which are responsible for helping you see in low-light environments. That's why one of the earliest symptoms of vitamin A deficiency is night blindness. You lose your ability to adapt to darkness, to drive safely at night, to recognize faces in dim rooms. And it doesn't stop there. As deficiency progresses, even mild or subclinical deficiency, it leads to dryness in the eyes. That's not just uncomfortable. It's a sign that the surface of the eye isn't being protected. Vitamin A is involved in maintaining the health of the conjunctiva and cornea, the front layers of the eye. When that's compromised, you're more vulnerable to irritation, infection, and over time, structural damage to the eye itself. And all of this begins, not with an injury or an infection, but with a quiet lack of a critical vitamin. Now, here's the thing most people miss. This decline doesn't always come with obvious warning signs. Especially after 50, the body's ability to absorb, convert, and store vitamin A can decrease due to changes in digestion, liver function, or dietary patterns. You may think you're getting enough because you eat carrots or sweet potatoes, but those foods contain beta-carotene, the plant-based precursor to vitamin A. The body has to convert beta-carotene into retinol, the active form, and that conversion becomes less efficient with age. In fact, studies show that many older adults who consume what appears to be an adequate amount of vitamin A on paper are still functionally deficient in terms of what their body can actually use. This is where it becomes really important to understand the difference between having vitamin A in your diet and actually utilizing it biologically. Because what we're really trying to protect isn't just the structure of the eye, it's the communication system between the retina and the brain. Vitamin A plays a direct role in that neural transmission. It ensures the visual signals coming from the retina are strong, consistent, and accurate. If those signals start to degrade even slightly, the brain begins to receive a weaker or noisier version of reality. That translates into slower reaction time, reduced visual clarity, and even cognitive fatigue, because your brain has to work harder to fill in the gaps. And this is where vision intersects with independence. When visual input starts to fail, especially in dynamic or low-light environments, people often become less confident. They avoid driving at night, hesitate while walking downstairs, or struggle with reading and screen time. These small adjustments, over time, can lead to reduced engagement with the world. And the frustrating part is, in many cases, this can be improved sometimes dramatically by simply restoring the proper levels of a single vitamin. Now, of course, that doesn't mean high-dose supplementation is the answer for everyone. Like any fat-soluble vitamin A needs to be respected and properly balanced. But what it does mean is that food sources rich in bioavailable vitamin A, like liver, eggs, and full-fat dairy, can be powerful tools for protecting your eyes as you age. When combined with healthy fats that support absorption, these foods help restore the cellular processes that are required for clear, adaptive, and resilient vision. This isn't just about prevention, it's about performance. The goal isn't just to keep your eyesight from getting worse. It's to strengthen the entire system that supports how you see and interpret the world, because when you give your body what it needs, at the right time in the right form, it responds. It stabilizes, it rebuilds, and the eyes, as fragile and sensitive as they are, have an incredible capacity to recover when we give them the tools they've been missing. When you understand how vitamin works not just as a nutrient but as a neural activator, you start to see your vision not as something fixed, but as something dynamic, something you can influence. And after 50, that kind of control is not just valuable, it's essential. Most people think vitamin A is only about preventing vision loss or dryness in the eyes, but what's often missed is how this nutrient actually improves how your brain processes visual information. There's a deeper level to how vitamin A works, and it goes far beyond keeping your eyes healthy on a surface level. It's about sharpening the performance of the neural circuitry behind vision, and once you understand that, the way you approach eye health changes completely. Inside your retina are highly specialized cells, rods, and cones that are constantly capturing light and translating it into electrical signals. Those signals are then sent down the optic nerve into the brain, where the visual cortex interprets them as color, shape, motion, depth, and space. Now, all of this happens in milliseconds, but in order for this process to be fast, clear, and accurate, the entire signaling chain has to be working at peak performance. Vitamin A plays a crucial role in keeping that chain strong, not just by protecting the photoreceptors, but by enhancing the speed and strength of the signal itself. When vitamin A levels are optimal, the visual pigments in the retina regenerate quickly. That means you recover faster from light exposure, adapt better in dim environments, and maintain sharper contrast sensitivity. But what's really fascinating is what happens on the brain side of the equation. Studies show that sufficient vitamin A improves how efficiently the brain processes visual input. That's because the quality of the signal arriving from the eyes influences how hard the brain has to work to make sense of what it's receiving. If the signal is weak or inconsistent, the brain compensates. It starts filling in gaps, trying to predict what it's seeing. That requires more cognitive effort, which leads to fatigue, slower reaction times, and even reduced clarity in decision making. This is especially important after 50 because the brain's plasticity, the ability to adapt and reorganize, is still active, but it's more sensitive to nutrient input. Your system becomes less forgiving. You can't get away with deficits the way you might have in your 30s. Vitamin A becomes one of those nutrients that supports the precision of brain function, not just by protecting your eyes, but by reducing the noise in the visual signals coming into the brain. The result: faster processing, cleaner interpretation, more reliable awareness of your environment. That means safer driving, quicker reactions to moving objects, more confident navigation in low-light conditions. All things that are crucial to maintaining independence as we age. It's not just about clarity, it's about visual intelligence. Your ability to recognize patterns, detect facial expressions, pick up subtle shifts in light or texture, those are all brain-level functions that begin with clean, consistent input from the eyes. And vitamin A ensures that the input is clean. It's not exaggeration to say that this nutrient acts like a stabilizer between the eye and the brain, making sure that both ends of the system are communicating clearly, without delay or distortion. Now, what's equally important to understand is how this performance enhancement can slip under the radar. You might not notice visual decline in the typical ways. Your vision might seem fine, but you might be noticing something else: more squinting at night, needing longer to adjust between bright and dim lighting, or even just feeling mentally tired after tasks that require a lot of visual concentration, like reading, driving, or scrolling. That's not just your eyes, it's your brain processing a lower quality signal, which takes more effort. And again, this is where vitamin A steps in, not just to prevent disease, but to upgrade the system. And it works both ways. When your brain receives a clean, sharp visual input, it doesn't just make vision easier. It supports the rest of your cognitive load too. You free up more mental energy for memory, focus, coordination. There's a ripple effect that starts when you strengthen the visual system. It stabilizes your awareness, improves your presence, and actually contributes to greater mental clarity. This is why restoring vitamin in a levels, especially in its active form, has benefits that go far beyond what most people associate with eye health. We're not just talking about not losing your vision, we're talking about seeing better, faster, and more clearly. And that affects everything, from how you perform at work, to how safely you move through your day, to how confidently you interact with your environment. Because ultimately, vision is not just about the eyes, it's about the entire feedback loop between the outside world and your inner state. And when that loop is clean, fast, and stable, you're more in sync with the world around you, and that changes everything. One of the most surprising reasons so many people over 50 begin to experience vision decline isn't because of disease, genetics, or even aging itself. It's because of what's missing from their diet. More specifically, it's the absence of usable vitamin in forms the body can actually absorb and convert. This might sound simple, but it's a critical point that affects millions of people, often without their knowledge. Modern diets, especially in Western countries, have become increasingly low in bioavailable vitamin A, and that deficiency has a direct impact on how your eyes function and how your brain processes visual information. Now, let's be clear, when people hear vitamin A, they immediately think of carrots and sweet potatoes, classic sources of beta-carotene. And while those foods are certainly healthy in many ways, they are not a reliable source of active vitamin A, especially as we age. Beta-carotene is what's known as a precursor. It has to be converted by the body into retinol, the active form your eyes and brain can actually use. But here's the problem. That conversion process becomes significantly less efficient after age 50. For some people, it drops off by more than 50%. That means even if you're eating all the right plant-based foods, you still might not be getting enough vitamin A in a usable form. This becomes a bigger issue when you layer it on top of other common age-related changes like slower digestion, reduced liver function, and changes in bile production, all of which affect how well your body can absorb fat-soluble vitamins like A. Add to that the rise in low-fat or plant-based diets that avoid organ meats and full-fat dairy, some of the richest sources of performed vitamin A, and it's easy to see why deficiency is becoming more common, even in health-conscious individuals. We're not talking about acute deficiency that causes blindness overnight. We're talking about subtle, long-term insufficiency that weakens the visual system over time, the kind that disrupts the brain-eye connection before you even notice it happening. That's what makes this so dangerous, because it's not dramatic, it's gradual. A little more squinting here, a little more trouble reading at night, a little more fatigue after focusing on a screen. These symptoms are often brushed off as normal aging, but in reality, they're the early signs of a system that's no longer getting the nutrients it needs to operate at full capacity. And once those deficits accumulate, they begin to affect not just the clarity of your vision, but the speed, stability, and accuracy of how your brain interprets what your eyes are seeing. Think about how much depends on clean visual input, driving, reading, navigating unfamiliar spaces, identifying faces, even your balance and coordination. When your visual system becomes strained, your overall quality of life can shift dramatically. And the frustrating part is that for many people, the root of that decline is nutritional. It's a missing piece in their diet that no one ever told them about. We've been taught to eat more plants, avoid fats, reduce cholesterol. And while some of that advice has its place, it has also pushed many people away from the very foods that could protect their eyesight. Foods like liver, egg yolks, full-fat dairy, and certain types of seafood are among the most potent sources of performed vitamin A. These are the sources your body doesn't have to convert. They're ready to be absorbed and used directly in the tissues of the eye and the brain. And when you combine them with healthy fats like olive oil, avocado, or omega-3 rich fish, the absorption increases even more. That combination can restore what years of modern dietary habits may have depleted. It's not just about restoring vitamin levels. It's about reestablishing a biological foundation that allows your eyes and brain to perform with clarity, speed, and resilience. You can have perfect glasses, the best lighting, the highest screen resolution, but if your cells are starved of the nutrients that power visual signaling, the system will still fail. That's why this isn't just a nutrition issue, it's a performance issue, a brain performance issue, a longevity issue. And it all starts with what's on your plate. What's encouraging is that this is something you can change. You don't have to accept declining vision as a natural consequence of aging. You can nourish your visual system. You can give your brain the raw materials it needs to process light, detail, and motion with precision. You can reclaim that feeling of clarity, not just in what you see, but in how fast and confidently your brain responds to what you see. And sometimes, all it takes is putting back what modern diets have slowly taken away. When we talk about healing or improving something in the body, we often look for complex solutions, medications, procedures, high-tech interventions. But some of the most powerful tools we have are the simplest. Food is one of them. And when it comes to protecting your eyes and preserving visual performance after 50, food isn't just fuel, it's information. It's instruction for your cells. The right food tells your body to repair, stabilize, and regenerate. And when it comes to restoring vitamin A, the nutrient that underpins nearly every visual process in the brain and retina, the way you eat can completely change the trajectory of your vision as you age. It's important to be precise here, because not all sources of vitamin A are equal. Plant-based sources like carrots, kale, and sweet potatoes are rich in beta-carotene, which the body can convert into active vitamin A. But as we've talked about, that conversion slows down significantly with age, so relying solely on those foods becomes a gamble. It might work in your 20s or 30s, but after 50, the odds shift. You can be eating all the right foods and still fall short of what your visual system actually needs to function optimally. That's where animal-based sources become critical. Liver, for example, particularly beef or chicken liver, is one of the most concentrated sources of bioavailable vitamin A on the planet. Just a small portion provides well beyond the daily requirement, in a form your body doesn't need to convert. It's immediately usable. Egg yolks are another excellent source, especially from pasture-raised hens, and they come with a cocktail of other nutrients like choline and lutein, which also support eye and brain health. Full-fat dairy, especially grass-fed butter, contains a moderate but highly usable amount of retinol as well. Now, for some people, eating organ meats like liver might seem unfamiliar or unappealing at first. But the goal isn't to overhaul your diet overnight. It's to strategically include just enough of these powerful foods to restore what may have been missing for years. Even a couple of servings of liver per week, or incorporating egg yolks more consistently, can make a significant difference. What matters most is consistency and the presence of healthy fats to help with absorption. Because vitamin A is fat soluble, it's absorbed best when eaten alongside dietary fat. That means if you're getting your retinol from liver or eggs, pairing it with olive oil, avocado, or omega-3 rich fish like salmon not only enhances absorption, it brings added anti-inflammatory benefits that support the whole visual system. These fats improve cell membrane health, blood flow to the eyes, and help transport fat-soluble nutrients into the tissues that need them most. It's a synergistic effect. When you pair the right nutrients together, they don't just add up, they multiply in effectiveness. This is where we begin to shift from just avoiding deficiency to actively building resilience. You're not just preventing your eyesight from getting worse. You're creating the biological environment where it can stabilize and, in some cases, improve. That's especially powerful when you consider how many people simply accept their visual decline as inevitable. They keep getting stronger glasses, struggle with screens, or stop driving at night, not knowing that they have more control than they think. Food can shift that narrative, but food alone isn't always enough for everyone. In certain cases, especially when deficiency is already present, or when absorption is impaired, supplementation may be needed. This is where precision becomes critical. Too much vitamin A can be toxic if taken without proper guidance. That's why food first is the ideal strategy. It gives your body what it needs in a naturally balanced, biologically appropriate form. If supplements are necessary, they should be used carefully and always in the context of an overall plan that supports long-term health, not just quick fixes. And it's not just about one vitamin. When you eat whole, nutrient-dense foods that support eye health, like leafy greens for lutein and zeaxanthin, fatty fish for DHA, or berries for antioxidant protection, you create a strong foundation. For the entire visual system, vitamin A might be the key that unlocks the door, but the rest of the nutrients help keep it open. The brain and eyes thrive when supported as a system, and food provides the full spectrum of what that system needs to operate with clarity and precision. The exciting part is that the body responds quickly when it's given the right signals. Within weeks of improving your intake of bioavailable vitamin A, many people notice better low light vision, reduced dryness, and greater comfort during visually demanding tasks. It's not magic. It's biology responding to nourishment, and that response is a reminder that healing is possible even later in life. When you learn to eat in a way that supports your brain and your eyes together, you're not just preserving your vision, you're reclaiming your connection to the world around you.